Hi everyone, and welcome to our sixth and final webinar of the season. Many may say that we've saved the best till last. So today we're going to be talking about sports. Competitive sports are beginning to come back online slowly but surely, and so now is a great time to start the conversation about building, growing, sustaining a robust kids, teens and family fan base for both sports bodies and clubs. My name is Maurice Wheeler. I am the Managing Director at We Are Family. We are Europe's largest kids and teens and family marketing agency network. And I am, as ever, joined by my Spanish colleague, my brother in Spain, Borja. Hey Borja, how's it going?
Hi, thank you so much. Welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. Borja here, I'm the Managing Director at Full Moon Spain, the local specialized agency. I'm sure that we are having a great session today, don't we, Maurice?
Yes, I think we will actually. It's shaping up to be really, really interesting. So really looking forward to this one. We record these sessions. I know a few people have been having some problems with registering, and we had some problems with our Hey Summit webinar program. So really apologize for that, but we're recording these sessions. So if any of your colleagues couldn't get in, then we'll share this video around afterwards so they can experience it themselves. So we will be having these slides up on the screen throughout the presentation, just so you can see the areas that we're talking about. If you'd rather see our faces, then you can click on us on the Zoom interface, and that zooms in and makes the slides shrink down.
Please let me introduce some general features. The global value of sports industry is estimated around $756 billion annually. Also, the sports industry generates around the 2% of employment in the European Union and around the 2% of its GDP. So such amazing features, but let's give the floor to today's speakers.
Yes, as I say, we've got a really incredible set of panelists joining us today. So joining us from the NFL, not one, but two people from there, giving us different perspectives on what they're doing. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Charlotte Offord. Charlotte Offord is the Senior Marketing Director at NFL.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for having me.
Also joining us from the NFL, we have former professional player and now head of community and grassroots development at NFL, Jason Brisbane. Hi, Jason.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. And then last but by no means least, we have Stephen Dobson, who's the Director of Partnership Activation and Platforms at Euroleague Basketball.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, Stephen. So, Jason, if it's okay with you, I'm going to start with you. You're responsible for the NFL's flag program, a kind of participation activation initiative that's been that you're running. Obviously, NFL isn't a regularly played sport. So, could you talk us a little bit through what that program entails and kind of give us some hints and tips if people want to develop their own participation activation themselves?
Yes, I'd love to. So, for a bit of history, American football has been played in the UK since the 80s, and that's mainly been the contact version with the helmets. But what we've done since 2015 now is trying to introduce mass participation into the flag version. So that's the 5v5 non-contact American football. So we started off with a small program in London with 6 schools, and now we've grown over the last 3 years to 300 schools across 17 different parts of the UK. Our program, it covers the skills on how to play American football, character development, and we also provide the equipment to schools to actually deliver this. So this program is mainly focused at primary school age, so that's children aged around about 10 to 12. But we're actually moving up into the secondary school, kind of high school age range as well. What our main our main element as well is we train the teachers to deliver this as well. So we actually train teachers or PE deliverers who are responsible for delivering in schools. We train those up and then leave them to go off to deliver the program. A big part of this as well is we have regional tournaments. So every area that we activate schools in, they finish with a tournament, and that actually acts as a qualifier to our national championship as well, which we held at the brand new Tottenham Stadium last summer, which was an absolutely incredible experience for those kids. And what we did for the first time as well is the winners of our national championship went on to represent the UK at the Pro Bowl, which is essentially the NFL All-Star game, and they competed against Mexico, China, USA, and Canada. So, it's really gone from a real small sport to something real nationwide, and, we're just trying to go from strength to strength. So in terms of the three things that we've really learned across building this program, the first part is inclusivity. So that's really ensuring that actually you don't just focus any new sports programs that you have, especially at that age range, to just, your sporty boys, for example, with boys and girls, especially under that age range being, physically the same. It's really important that we actually make a real push to ensure that we have equal participation, because ultimately that will grow, participation growing on, and also, a development for the sport as well. Number two would be don't assume knowledge. So, of course, with our sport, it's not a well-known, regular sport for people to play. But I think at any level of sport, try and give people as much information as they can, because everybody's coming in at different entry points, and you can't assume that everyone knows. Even traditional sports like soccer or rugby, there's a lot that people don't know. And then the third piece would be end goals and exit routes. So all of our programs culminate in a tournament. But what is also important is that kids have got somewhere to go to out of school. So we're really working really hard to actually develop community programs and work with existing clubs and connect these programs together to ensure that if a kid gets really excited about playing NFL flag in school, they know where they can go to, and there's actually a place for them to continue playing until they grow old.
And you worked with both schools and teachers, but also like multi-sport providers and other people to deliver that, or has it mainly been relying on kind of in-school teachers?
Well, for the past few years, it's been mainly focused on teachers, but yes, now we're moving actually into out-of-school multi-sport providers as well, to really, because they're already present in the community. So there's no point in trying to create more people to compete in an already crowded market. Let's actually train the people that are already there, equip them, and they've already got an captive audience as well.
And Stephen, you guys have a participation program too, but you have slightly different objectives, don't you? Maybe you're on mute. You're on mute. Then.
Thanks for that, Borja. So we have some similarities with what Jason described, but obviously some differences. So basketball is pretty well known across Europe. It's widely played in schools across the continent. I mean, even myself, I'm British, I played basketball at school. So we have some slightly different objectives, but also the teams within the Euroleague are very, very famous sporting institutions in their countries, and indeed around the world in some places. Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Fenerbahce in Istanbul, Panathinaikos in Athens. And these clubs have been in their communities, servicing them and encouraging kids to play the sport, whether it's football, basketball. They're multi-sport clubs mostly, for 100 years or so. So we have a slightly different context to NFL in UK. But one of the major drivers for us as a league is that the EuroLeague is set up to allow the clubs to act stronger together. So although we have some very, very strong team organizations, we tend to try to act collectively where it's appropriate. And clearly, pooling resources around getting more kids to fall in love with the sport of basketball is one of those instances where the clubs like to cooperate together. So the league sits above a lot of those academy activations and community work that the clubs do. And the other driving force for us is that at a league level, we have a very strong CSR program that we're very proud of called the One Team. One Team is based around sustainability efforts, but also within it, we have some initiatives to educate kids with life skills, particularly from vulnerable communities. So those are the kind of two driving forces behind our participation program. It actually sits in between both the marketing department and the CSR department as a result. And so I would describe the main objectives for us really is primarily it's a unified program that can be implemented in Moscow, Tel Aviv, Istanbul, very different contexts geographically. But it's to foster love for the sport of basketball. The second objective really is to allow us to educate kids with life skills, so things like nutrition, healthy living, teamwork, communication, a lot of those aspects that come into our CSR program through basketball, which is a fun, inspiring, engaging way for kids to learn. And the third objective is basically to provide our brand partners at a league level with a way to contribute in the communities that our clubs are in. So a lot of our partners use the league for visibility, typical brand association, typical goals of sponsorship, but we had a lot of requests a few years ago to help our partners be a part of what the teams and we are doing in the community, and contribute to the health of communities, health of the game as well. So we have those three main goals: is grow the sport, educate, and then be able to integrate our partners in as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the program looks like as well?
Just a little bit, particularly how I guess where it does achieve those things, so where it does differ slightly from the NFL program, so where it can sit across the multiple clubs, and give them the club something to engage with.
So we built a model for, it's called the Euroleague Academy. It's for under 12s and boys and girls, and we built a model of activities that can be placed, like airdropped into each city. So there's some similarities in each city that the Euroleague Academy has. Each set of activities lasts for a month, and we have basketball camps, basic skills training, and then education classes as well, and finally tournaments. And although we have a framework developed by the league at the league level, it's all run by the local club itself. So we go to the local club's facilities, and let's say it's in Munich, we go to Bayern Munich's facilities, and the Bayern Munich coaches would be running each of the actual clinics and tournaments. And we also rely on the club to do the outreach to the schools, because each club has much closer relationships with schools and local communities than we can do in a league, because we're spread across all the way from Russia, Israel, Turkey, right across to Spain in Western Europe. So I guess we have a local flavour to it as well.
Sorry, I guess one of the main differences there is your activation is far more decentralised, and you're, I guess, relying on the clubs to deliver some stuff at local level, whereas Jason's obviously got to be delivering his stuff centrally.
Correct. Yeah.
And you talked a little bit, Stephen, there about brand partnerships and enabling brand partnerships. Could you tell us a little bit about what makes a good brand partner, and I guess what you need to do to be a good partner to the brands that you work with?
Sure. So, objective 3 is to allow our partners to play a role in the activities. So, I suppose the partner that I would highlight here would be Adidas. As a league partner, they're technical partner of the league. And the reason that it works particularly well in the Euroleague Academy context is because we have a lot of shared objectives. And I don't mean solely just, from a league perspective. Obviously, we want to encourage kids to play the game so that they fall in love with the game and become fans of the Euroleague and our teams in future. And obviously, Adidas want to create potential customers of basketball products like shoes and apparel. But beyond that, at Euroleague, we have our CSR program, which means that we have some more purpose-driven elements like sustainability and upskilling kids. And Adidas have those same purpose-driven elements in their marketing toolkit. So they have a big sustainability program. Part of that is called Run for the Oceans. It's about plastic waste, which fits in with our recycling elements of our sustainability program. And they also have an Adidas campaign specific to basketball called Legacy, where they use a lot of their resources to go into impoverished parts of cities and teach basketball skills. And also, I mean, they've done stuff like bringing Jonah Hill to do a filmmaking class under this basketball program. So they've done some quite interesting stuff. And around those areas of sustainability and upskilling kids, we both have some similarities across the two companies. So that was the space that we played in. And I think the reason, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we did, but for me, the reason it worked is just that we shared different layers of objectives here. So a lot of this came out through multiple meetings, because Run for the Oceans isn't a basketball program. It's a company-wide program for Adidas. So what we did was, this was actually planned. It was planned to take place in April, so we didn't run it in the end. But what we had planned was to work with Panathinaikos in Athens. And we had a recycling education program inside Euroleague Academy. So some classes which were linked to the Run for the Oceans program from Adidas. We had built a series of installations where kids could shoot a plastic bottle either into a basket from around the three-point line, or they could dunk the bottle, and then we would be teaching basics of recycling. I think we did some research around it, and the level of recycling in Greece was one of the lowest levels in Europe. So this was something that really ticked a box for Adidas and us. And the other piece that we did with them was planning a English lesson for Greek kids using one of the American stars of the Panathinaikos team, also happened to be an Adidas athlete. So the athlete was going to come, and we were going to teach basic English through actions of the basketball game, which we were quite excited about. We will run this again in future when we're allowed, or we'll use a digital technology to try to replicate that part at least. So I think what would have worked well with Adidas here was just that we were able to do something slightly different in the program. They brought their own assets, they brought their own ideas as well.
Interesting, Steve. And Charlotte, it would be a very interesting challenge in that the NFL is widespread in America and very much interlinked into the fabric of society. Yet over here in Europe, is it a lot less so? However, there are pockets of extreme fandom. What's your approach to creating content that can teach the European audience about the NFL, as well as make the different clubs and players more accessible?
Yeah, this is an area we spend actually quite a lot of our time. As you can imagine, our fan base across Europe has such varying levels of knowledge about the sport, some with that kind of extensive understanding of the game, and others that might only engage with the sport because they may have, heard of a star player, or someone has given them a piece of merchandise somewhere along the way. So what we try and do is ensure we're creating content strands that speak to all different knowledge levels. I think more importantly, educating fans about the game without talking down to them, or perhaps patronizing any fans that know the game well. And that's something, that education piece is something that we bucket into a theme called stealth learning. And then I think the second part, which I'll go through after some examples, is more about the distribution of that content. So that's kind of the second part that we would prioritize as being is important in terms of where that content then lives. More recently, we've started putting quite a bit of focus on creating a youth marketing strategy. Over the last few years, we've started to see our content seems to over-index among younger audiences. And so we've done a lot of work now on how we engage with youth early and then kind of take them on this journey. So education obviously is a big part of that. And some of the examples of content that we have created so far, so cross-sport content, so that football meets football is a big example of that. We've worked with a lot of other sports and other sports teams and created content series. One that we did a couple of years ago was called Game Recognized Game. And it basically paired a Premier League football player with an American football player, and was about teaching each other skills and drills for each of their respective sports. So this piece was about helping to attract a wider sports fan, but teaching them some of the athleticism in the NFL that they might not know, because potentially they were a football fan before, and hadn't kind of come across NFL before. Localized content is another one. Anything that we do that has local relevance to the market seems to overperform across our platforms. So we currently are quite fortunate. We have 6 UK players that play in the NFL. So being able to tell their stories and give our audience kind of insight into like what it's like to play in the NFL always does really well. Having local heroes brings the sport closer to home for fans in Europe, and gives them something to root for, gives them someone to root for. But it also helps us to showcase that you don't need to be American to play at the professional level. Other examples include under the helmet content. So giving fans a real insight into what goes on behind the scenes, so they feel closer to the sport than just being able to watch it on TV. So this could be anything from inside the locker room, players being mic'd up on the field, sharing workout and nutrition tips, going into players' homes, but anything we can do that the players kind of agree to that helps the fans get to know the players personally really helps drive that knowledge and fandom much quicker than just kind of them watching it on television. Another nice one is quizzes. So more recently, actually, we've put a lot of effort into just putting together some really simple quizzes that help fans of all levels of knowledge to kind of engage with the sport. So it could be things like, what NFL player are you most like? Or a simple team picker where fans would kind of answer a series of questions, and then that would reveal the team that they should support based on their answers. And we use a platform called Jebbit to do these quizzes. It's a really simple social tool, and it basically enables you to build the quiz really quickly, and then also add in things like data capture elements that are kind of GDPR compliant off the back. So if you want to, then someone answers a quiz and then goes on to enter, they could win a jersey or something really, really small but really simple that helps us to in turn engage people, get them interested and get them more educated on the sport, but also to help grow our database so we can continue to talk to them. Animated guides is something else that we did a couple of years ago, and actually was a real success. So we had a huge challenge of just trying to think of ways that we could tell people or educate people on how the sport is played out, how the season plays out. There's so many divisions, and to win your division, to get into the playoffs, to then get to Super Bowl, it's just something that was really hard for people to understand. So we teamed up with a company called Cub Studios, and we created a series of animated videos that essentially educated fans on the rules of the game, the way the season works, and then how they make it into the playoffs, and then also just the history of each team. They're only really short, they're 60-second videos, but they're all animated. And so it's just a really fun, simple way to get a complicated message across, whilst kind of being a fun way to learn. So that's something that we've continue to do, and I think a conversation I had actually yesterday was about how do we take those a bit further and create positions and tell people about what each position means and what that player does, and do it in an animated and fun way. Gaming is another one. So gaming is a really strong way to educate young fans in the sport and grow fandom. Our game Madden we produce a lot of content surrounding it to engage that younger fan and get them interested in the game. Some specific examples would be things like Madden versus FIFA battles. So using, we know FIFA is a really popular game, so how do we use that to then get FIFA gamers into Madden? Doing sims of upcoming games or a Super Bowl. So it's kind of like a prediction through someone playing the game online. And then using gaming influencers to play the game and provide kind of hot tips for other gamers. So gaming is an area that we're continuing to work on. I wouldn't say that we're 100% experts in that field, but we know from our research that 52% of people that have bought the game say that playing the game has helped strengthen their fandom. So we know that there's a huge opportunity for us in the gaming space. And then I think just lastly, touching on the distribution side, you know, we know that the way, and I'll touch more UK specific here, but the way in which a UK fan consumes sport news is very different from a way that the US do. So an example of that is in the US, a fan is very likely to go to NFL.com or a league or a team's website to read the latest news or stories about their team, their favorite team, or their sport. In the UK, that's just the opposite. So fans don't go to NFL.com, they don't go to the Premier League's website to consume their news. They're more likely to go to, you know, BBC.com or Sky Sports or other kind of social first publishers. So for us, it's really important that we ensure that our content is present across all of those sites. So we work really closely with external publishers to create content streams that suit their audiences. And to do that, we use kind of a range of different distribution methods. So the most obvious internal platforms is our own. So posting across our own social platforms and then amplifying that content through paid social to reach that wider audience. Sending stuff out to our database. More recently, we've been spending a lot more time building out kind of propensity models around our data points and interactions, and then trying to predict what we think a fan is more likely to be interested at the point in the fan journey that they're on, and then feeding them that content. External partners and platforms is hugely important to us to help us amplify the content. So as I touched on earlier, media partners, Sky, BBC, Yahoo Sport, Telegraph are all partners of ours, and we work with them closely to put out regular content. But also we created 3 years ago an influencer program. So we have about 250 influencers within the program across all different verticals, so music, fashion, sport, food. And the key thing about the program is really about, we don't pay them a fee to do any of the work for us or post with us, but we reward them with merchandise and sponsored products, tickets to games, and sometimes in larger cases, trips to US games as kind of the reward for working with us and doing things. And what we've been able to do with the influencer network is take them on a journey so they become more of a fan. So they started to talk about it themselves without us kind of prodding them to do so. And then I think lastly, social first publishers. Again, social media has obviously become a really important platform for all of us. And, you know, similar to influencers, publishers are just as important. So we work with social publishers to amplify our content, such as kind of the Lad Bible, Joe.co.uk, and then more recently, platforms like Grime Daily, who are very much in the music grime space, but super relevant for that youth audience. And we create content pieces with them that kind of help to educate and engage their audiences in the way that they think is relevant. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a snapshot of some of the things that we do just to kind of keep that engagement level high and try and grow that knowledge and take people on a fan journey.
Yes, no, thank you very much. I think one of the interesting points as I hear you talk there is that educating the market about a category is usually such a waste of marketing collateral and marketing resource to try and educate everybody about what the sport's about. You know, you want to kind of jump to the next step, as it were, which is obviously one of the challenges that you need to face. And Jason, actually, when you were talking earlier, you talked about how one of the important things for your programs, your flag programs, is how you need an exit for them. You need something for them to go on to next. Could you talk us through a little bit on the fan journey, how you keep kids, you know, once I guess some of them are going to experience NFL for the very, very first time with one of your programs. How do you then keep them on that journey of fandom all the way through to the season ticket holding mega fan? You're on mute, by the way, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, what's really key for us is the experience that they get as soon as they start the program. And with the sport, even for our teachers and even our deliverers as well, who are new to the sport, the first thing we need to really make people clear is what makes this sport different. And the first thing you'll find out is it sounds different and it looks different. So our actual entry point is it's a clip that's available on YouTube and also on NFL.com. Is the season in 6. So this wraps up the NFL past season in 6 minutes, and it's a great entry point because the thing with American football, the set play nature of it, it sounds so much different. There's so much more talking, there's so much more communication, there's so much more energy, and then you combine that with the flyovers, the fireworks, the cheerleaders, the mascots, and suddenly people are blown away straight away that wow, this is really, really, really exciting. So that's our kind of entry point for anyone, and we always ask our teachers and deliverers to make sure they try and show that to their groups or share the videos with their groups. So then the next stage of that then is any school or community organization that we work with, we will assign them to an NFL team. So when they go to compete in a tournament, they'll represent, it could be the Dallas Cowboys, it could be the Minnesota Vikings. And that's really, really important because that's actually, because what we found of a lot of the research is usually you'll become a fan of this sport by something a lot of time that you came across of, your mum or dad might have bought you a t-shirt or what have you. So, and this is very much the same. Your first introduction to the game is representing a team actually in competition and what you do and something meaningful to you. So that's really, really important for us, and that actually helps us from a wider lens, especially those teachers and organizers that are really bought in. Their whole school kind of environment, sports environment, suddenly revolves around that team because it's so exciting. And then, so that obviously helps really build that kind of an initial foundation of who I support and why I support them. Then also what we do as the kind of season goes along and the school year goes along, we have activities that we have with our schools and deliverers that focus on different key parts of the season. So you've got the kind of Pro Bowl, the All-Star game, you've got the Super Bowl, but you've also got the Combine, which is the physical tests for the prospective NFL players. So they go through a ton of different tests. So we've kind of packaged that into just an activity pack for kids to take part in school or in community organizations. So that's really taking them through, okay, well, the season's done, but actually this is how you still stay in touch with the NFL. These are the different things that you can do. And that leads on to the draft as well. So this kind of creates essentially a full year of kind of activities and engagement. And once we've got that, then a lot of that then feeds into a lot of what Charlotte does as well. So we've gotten the bug, they want to start looking for more content, and Charlotte's team, we kind of start directing them to that way to actually start then, okay, what else is going on, what's going on in this world, and then we kind of hand the baton to them, and I hope the rest continues up to long-term fans.
Thank you, Jason. And finally, we've managed to go the entire session without mentioning the proverbial elephant in the room, that's COVID-19. While there's a million questions I could ask, and we almost certainly don't know the future, but could you comment on how you think the fan experience might be different in years' time? Let's start with you, Stephen.
I will start by saying that I don't know, but I will happily share some views. So in a year's time, look, I will assume that we still don't have fans in arenas or stadiums by that point, but we're broadcasting games just in empty venues. So I think we'll certainly see some digital overlays inside the arenas on TV broadcast, kind of replicating what it looks like to have fans in the arena, probably with some audio as well, maybe some sponsor integrations inside that. I think we'll probably see those quite soon, actually, maybe in the next couple of weeks in some of the football leagues over here in Europe. I guess the thing for me is the things that people love about sport aren't going to go away. So things like social gathering, that desire is still there, sense of belonging, community, but it's going to be interrupted. And I think we're just going to see quite a lot of technology into the market to try to fill the gap. And some of the fan rituals that come along with gatherings of fans, so whether they're in bars or the arena, things like the comedy, the singing, the chants, tifos, things like this, they'll shift online in some way, and there'll be ways for fans to gather and kind of complete those fan rituals that they normally do face-to-face and live using technology. What technology is, I mean, we're starting to see some of those hit our desks at Euroleague, various proposals from startup companies and more established businesses as well, some solutions. So I think we'll probably see these enter the sports experience quite quickly. So within a year's time, I don't know whether we will be quite accustomed to experiencing sport with some of these technologies, or whether there'll be a flurry of further innovations and creativity, things that I can't quite yet imagine. But I think for us, what we're thinking about is we want to make a communal viewing experience, but we want to take it out of the WhatsApp group, which is currently a very nice experience for fans to use. So we'd like to kind of like own that space with the technology in some way, and ideally put it on screen as well alongside the game. So using our OTT product.
Yeah.
Sorry
to interrupt. I said sorry to interrupt. I was going to jump in and just get from the NFL's perspective. I mean, Charlotte, what are you seeing? What do you think is going to happen in a year's time from a fan experience perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with Stephen on this one. I think none of us actually really know where we're going to be in a year's time, but I think we're certainly optimistic and hopeful that we can kind of be back in stadiums in some capacity. But, we've been doing a lot of work internally in terms of planning for almost every scenario, really. I think regardless of whether we're back in stadium or not, I think things like media become more important than ever before. Something came across my desk the other day which talked about ghost games and basically the scenario that will television and linear television productions of sport, live sport, actually also include things like anthems and player entrances and all the things that you would get out of the live experience, but you are then getting at home, rather than cutting straight into the action. So things like that are obviously being considered. I think digital consumption becomes really important, and the quality of that digital programming. I think that's kind of happening now, and I think will probably continue. And then I think more and more content. People are going to need to have access to experience the sport that they love and the team that they love. And so I think as much as content is still really important now, I think more so the pressure gets put on organizations like us and Stephen's organization to start producing the right content more regularly to fulfill those needs.
Jason, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think echoing what Charlotte said, I think there's going to be I personally believe that there's going to be a real shake-up in the whole kind of rights, deals, packages. I think there's going to be a big shake-up there in terms of accessibility, because, if we have, massively, reduced revenues from in stadiums across all sports, because the less people are, even if we, for example, if stadiums are only allowed to work at 50% capacity, then you still need to be able to service all these fans. So, I feel like there's going to be a big shift in actually kind of, terrestrial sport and paid for sport, which actually could be a really positive thing for the kind of wider sports engagement landscape.
Interesting. That more people see it, expanding the reach and maybe increasing the fan base. Interesting. We don't sadly have time for any questions. I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to try and wrap things up and summarize kind of what I heard. I think there's we definitely heard a lot from Charlotte talking about compelling content and creating compelling stories about characters and teams. And I think particularly for the kids and teens, creating really nice, juicy, engaging content around the players and around the teams and what the teams stand for, I think is really important to make the audience care and relate to the sports. Brand partnerships, as you were saying, Stephen, it's definitely not just about the money. It's about brand fit. It's about making sure that when the two are combined, that you're ultimately stronger as a result. Both of you are stronger as a result of that partnership, rather than it being about relying on one or the other. And ultimately, if you get the right partner, then they can help you with that relatability as well. being able to interact and engage across the sport and across multiple touch points is really essential, and participation programs are the fundamental bedrock of that. If you've got kids playing your sport and picking the ball up, then for both of you picking the ball up, then that's great, and making that accessible. But you've got to make sure that obviously that is accessible, because your fans aren't always those that could play the game particularly well. You just need to look at a Sunday League football side to realise that. There's also an element of the kind of one size fits all is definitely not the case. Like every single sports club, sports institution, body have got very different needs and requirements. And we see just here from the conversation between the NFL and with Euroleague basketball, that actually they've both got very different segments of fans. They're both in very different places, you know, even down to the fact that, you know, the NFL might not benefit from a father passing a love of the sport down to their son in the same way that maybe a Real Madrid basketball fan might do. So, you know, every sport has got a different thing, and actually understanding your complex fan segments and how they interact is vital. And then finally, fans are fanatical. They like to share their feedback about you, whether it's good or whether it's bad. So you know, there's a weight of the world on your shoulders when you're doing this activity. So just you need to be aware of that and just tread carefully and make sure that you embrace both the positive and the negatives of your fan base. So as I say, that's all we've got time for. This is the end of this season, but it's definitely not the end of the overall program. So there's more to come. So please send feedback through to me, and we can make sure that we are improving and getting better. We'll definitely be using a different registration platform, considering some of the problems we've had with that. But that leaves me finally to say thank you so much to my panelists. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Stephen. It's been great to have you with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Marius.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's been a pleasure. So this is the end of the season. We will be back in the summertime with a monthly webinar series, taking us through to the end of the year. Remember, we cannot predict the future, but we can create it. Have a great week. Bye.